so proud. This is absolutely amazing. So we are hosting Nikki Erlick today, and Giovanna will do an introduction. Welcome, everyone.
That's a lot of Harrison local authors. That's really cool.
I know, and all of them, you know, wrote great books that everyone enjoy.
Well, it's my pleasure to welcome Nikki Erlick virtually. And this will be your second event with us. I think you were a summer reading ambassador in summer of 2022, which wasn't that long ago. So we're so excited to have you back, even if it's virtual. And as you guys all heard, we are recording this. So if you need to, do you hear any background noise by any chance? Or you a little bit?
I hear someone's voice in the background.
Okay. So we're recording, so we need to be mindful to be quiet, and I will mute myself as well.
No worries.
But I will first introduce Nikki, and she's the author of The Measure, an instant New York Times bestseller, a Wall Street Journal bestseller, and a USA Today bestseller. The Measure has been translated into 24 languages worldwide. Nikki previously worked as a travel writer and ghostwriter after graduating Harvard University summa cum laude and earning her master's degree from Columbia University. She currently lives in Los Angeles, but she walks still like a New Yorker. So join me in welcoming Nikki Erlick.
Thank you for having me. I really appreciate it. It's always very cool to do events with obviously my hometown. I grew up in Harrison and lived there up until college. And so it's very cool to be back. Are we going to do a Q&A, or do you want me to talk? I'm not sure. We just sort of just got in here, and so everyone else is on mute. So
Sorry, I was muted. I didn't.
No worries.
So we have a smaller group today. So I know some of us have read your book and might have specific questions for you, and some might be new to the book. Can you just give us a general overview, and then we'll
Totally.
chime in?
Totally. So as was mentioned, my first book, The Measure, came out in 2022, and that's when I was the summer reading ambassador for the Harrison Library, and I got to do my book launch for The Measure at the Harrison Library in my hometown. And so many of my teachers from elementary school, middle school, high school came. It was such a special night for me, and we're like celebrating kind of this dream come true of being an author. And my new book now that just came out this summer is The Poppy Fields. And The Poppy Fields centers around a place that's kind of like an experimental treatment center that claims to have a cure for grief and for the pain of loss. And it was inspired by a time of grief in my own life and loss in my family. And I remember kind of the main feeling at that time for me was just like wanting to go to sleep, and just like sleep being the only escape from from the pain, from the sadness. And I was like, I wanted so badly to go to sleep and just kind of wake up on the other side, wake up kind of feeling more back to normal, feeling better. And as I was thinking that, I looked up at a poster on my bedroom wall, which was a scene from the movie The Wizard of Oz, when Dorothy is asleep in a poppy field. And something just kind of like a little light bulb moment went off. And I thought, what if there was a place called the Poppy Fields where people could do exactly what I want to do right now, which is go to sleep and wake up feeling healed, feeling better from whatever kind of drove them to sleep. In my case, it was grief. And so the book kind of became about a place where you could go to sleep for an entire month, a very prolonged sleep, And then when you wake up, the pain, is gone. And so that was kind of the initial spark for the book. And then because of that initial inspiration with the poster from The Wizard of Oz, I thought maybe I could kind of keep up some Wizard of Oz allusions throughout the book. And so I decided to structure the book largely as a journey narrative, the way that The Wizard of Oz is a journey, right? Where four strangers and one little dog come together over the course of the journey to get to kind of their mysterious destination, their place where there is a person, and the wizard sort of figure, this kind of enigmatic figure. And so for me, the Poppy Fields became a story for strangers and a dog who are traveling in their yellow rental car instead of the yellow brick road. And they're traveling from Kansas, the Kansas area, the Kansas City airport, to California, where the Poppy Fields are located. And they pretty much all want to speak to the founder of the Poppy Fields, who is sort of like the mysterious female scientist, behind the curtain. And they all want to they all want to go to her for different reasons. And there's a tornado, there's a hot air balloon, there's other kind of little nods to the Wizard of Oz throughout the story. But I also felt like structuring the story as a journey, a road trip across the country, also kind of worked on more of a symbolic, metaphorical level, because it is a journey that is not straight, it's not linear. There are detours and setbacks and flat tires and these things that kind of mirror to me the journey through loss and healing. It's not a straight journey, it's not linear. There are going to be times when you think you're going one way and you're actually going another, and everyone kind of moves through that journey at their own speed. And so I thought that the idea of creating this journey worked as both kind of, it's the physical setting and structure of the novel. It has this ties to the Wizard of Oz, and it also works for the theme of the novel, which is kind of how we heal and the different ways that we heal. And in this book, some people choose to heal by kind of opting into this controversial experimental treatment. There are potential side effects to the treatment. There's potential sacrifice involved in the treatment. And some people kind of can't imagine, choosing that treatment and healing that way. And so the book kind of raises all these questions of, just the different ways that grief manifests for all of us, and the different ways that we all kind of move through our own healing journeys.
I love that because, and I didn't put the connection aside from the Poppy Fields with the Wizard of Oz, with the canary part.
I've like said that to people. I know some people, they really see it and they're like, they get everything. They're like every Easter egg. They're like really into the Wizard of Oz. And then other people are like, that entire thing went over my head. They're like, I don't even associate the Poppy Fields with the Wizard of Oz. So maybe it was very subtle in the end. I don't know.
Well, maybe, or just I was so engrossed in what was happening and how the story was developing that I sort of missed that, because now I have to go back because there's four of the characters that are traveling together. There's a little dog.
I thought the tornado kind of in like the Kansas area tipping off the road trip, but for me it was like, obviously the inspiration for the book came from like that scene where they're asleep in the Poppy Fields. And so I thought everybody immediately would like, when you hear Poppy Fields, you would think the Wizard of Oz. And especially like, the book coming out when like the Wicked movies came out, and there's kind of this resurgence of the Wizard of Oz in pop culture. It's at the Sphere in Las Vegas. I feel like the Wizard of Oz is everywhere right now. But my editor was like, no, she was like, I think of World War I when I think of Poppy Fields. And like a lot of readers of historical fiction, I think, immediately go to World War I instead. And it was interesting when we were designing the cover for the book, which has kind of like sort of dark maroon purple sort of color poppies on them. We did that because we thought having like bright red poppies would look like a World War I novel. And so that was kind of we were sort of steering people away from, thinking it was historical fiction.
No, that was smart. That was definitely smart. I did think of World War I with the poppies, the sea of poppies. Yeah.
Yeah. And there are, towards the end of the book, I talk about kind of the poppy as a symbol,
Mhm.
a lot of which comes from the poppies growing on the battlefields
Mhm.
after the war. And so it definitely, we're definitely using kind of all of the myth, all of the symbols around poppies in this book, being symbols of renewal and rebirth. Of course, is correlates with kind of like going on this healing journey and going to sleep and waking up.
Mhm.
But for me, it was very, you know, for me, I was really steeped in the Wizard of Oz of it all. And like for researching the book, I did the cross country road trip that, you know, occurs over the course of the book. And I went to the Wizard of Oz Museum in Kansas while I was there. And so I'm at my desk right now and I have like a lot of the stuff that I got. Like I put, this says no one sees the wizard, and it's on my desk when it's like I'm in writing mode, like don't come in, no one sees the wizard, you know.
Cool. That's so cool. Yeah, I read in your acknowledgments in the back that you did the trip with your sister from Kansas all the way to California. And that
Yes.
sort of touches on some of the themes from the book too, because the sibling relationships with two of the characters really, but with Ava and her sister Emily, or Emily,
Emmy, yeah.
Emmy, that
nicknames, but
which I guess that's what I was really focusing on, and I thought you did a wonderful job capturing that, the essence of that relationship. And your sister traveled with you, so did she help you with some of the scenes, or just like to frame some of the plot?
I mean, she helped me mostly because I just didn't want to do this trip alone. I'm not really a big fan of driving, to be honest. And I was like, I don't think I can be in a car alone with myself for, you know, hours and hours each day. Especially because I knew as I was doing the trip, like I'm doing it for research. And so I was trying to take a ton of photos and videos and write down notes every night and stuff. And so it was helpful to have somebody else there to just kind of experience it with and talk about it with. And she's a better photographer than I am, so she has better photos that I was able to like reference later. But yeah, as you said, you know, the sibling relationships have been very important in both of my books. The Measure had two sisters at the heart of the characters as well, and they were much more closely modeled off of myself and my sister. Then I decided for this book, okay, I just wrote a book about sisters who are very close, you know, kind of inspired by my life because I'm very close with my sister. So what would it be like to write about siblings that have more complicated relationships? And, you know, Ava gets in the car, she's looking for her sister Emmy, who's at the poppy fields. And they're estranged right now. You know, they have a not very good relationship. And so that was kind of an interesting challenge for me to write because it was different than what I've experienced in my life. And then we have Ray and Johnny, who are the other sibling pair in the book. And Ray is going to the poppy fields because his brother Johnny was there and slept there. They're both firefighters, and he slept there after kind of experiencing a tragedy as a firefighter. And you know, they also have, you know, they're very close. They're both in the fire service together. But then right before Johnny goes to poppy fields, they have the huge fight. And so, you know, getting into those sibling relationships was really interesting for me. It's something that I think being in a sibling, feel like I'm always just drawn to this type of relationship in stories, and wanting to kind of show that, you know, two people raised in the same household, raised by the same parents, raised in the same environment, can like how they can end up on disparate paths, and how they can have such different opinions about the same thing, and how they can go through the same experience, like a shared loss, but process it so differently. You know, I kind of, as a writer, find that very fascinating in terms of kind of shaping characters who come from the same place but end up in different places, or have very different perspectives on you know, the same issue.
Well, I have an older sister, so I can relate very well.
Yes, I am the older sister, so
you are the older sister.
I'm the controlling, you know, responsible one, you know.
Well, I guess we fall into our roles, right?
I know that's a stereotype, but I do
default
fit it
to some extent. So just getting back a little bit to the genre of both, I guess, The Measure and the poppy fields, because I've seen it described as science fiction, dystopian fiction, magic realism, domestic fiction, even a psychological thriller. So, so
Interesting.
what would you classify it as? Or I hate to say that because that it's not always a cookie cutter type of
Sure.
definition, but what is your goal? Like, what are you, when you start your writing, what are you, your main focus on?
Yeah, I like having the freedom of not feeling boxed into any particular genre, which is why I think the stories that I write tend to be described with many different, labels or elements because I'm kind of moving around. The measure, definitely had more kind of magical realism in it, more supernatural fantasy elements, but set in our real world. And the poppy fields to me, I would also classify as speculative fiction because, this treatment for grief does not exist right now. I've, made it up. It's kind of lightly science fiction, but it's not magical. I think to me, the poppy fields exist in a world that is our world 5 minutes from now. It's this treatment, I think, is something that probably can and will exist 10 years from now. As I was doing the research for the book, I realized that currently scientists are researching if potential pills can be used to help people who are suffering from grief. And so, this came to me as like a fictional idea, but as I was doing the research, realized this is very much, this is not science fiction. This is happening right now. And so, to me, this is a book that's set just kind of ever so slightly in the future. But I think when I set out to write a book, I usually start with like a big kind of what if question. And what if everyone knows how long they're going to live? What if there was a cure for grief, for what I was feeling when I was writing the book? And they tend to then kind of, it lends itself to, I can pull from this genre, I can pull from this genre. And I feel like right now there's a lot of kind of very exciting writing happening that doesn't adhere to any one label, one category. People do have kind of a lot of flexibility. And to me, oftentimes setting a story in a world that feels a lot like ours, but isn't 100% ours, allows for more kind of ability to, question what our society looks like right now, or maybe critique it, or maybe kind of have moments for reflection and discussion in a way that maybe feels a little bit easier because you're kind of coming at things from the side.
Mm-hmm.
Like both of my books tackle topics that are maybe a little like difficult to discuss, a little taboo. They talk about mortality and death and grieving and things that are really, really hard to talk about often in our own lives. And so if you're coming at them in the lens of a fictional story, a speculative story that doesn't feel quite so like, oh my gosh, I'm living in this story because the world is a little different than mine. My hope is that you can kind of dig into these topics and have these discussions in a slightly more maybe accessible, kind of easier way.
Mm-hmm. Wow, I love that. I love that.
That's the hope. And I've heard from book clubs that it does kind of facilitate those discussions. So I'm
definitely.
glad.
Sure, definitely. And I love how, well, the four strangers sort of become a family by the end of the book.
Yeah.
Which you don't really realize that as you're reading along till you get towards the end and how much they've experienced in a short period of time. Have you experienced that at all where you've sort of been in a situation or
in like the forced proximity?
Because it spoke so true, the dialogue, everything.
Yeah, I think that sometimes you can be even more honest and open with strangers than you can with people in your actual life because there's no there's no kind of sense of, oh, this person knows me, they think this of me, they have this perception of me, I need to be more guarded around them so they continue to think this about me. You can be vulnerable and totally honest with strangers and because you're like, oh, I'll never see this person again. And so I think there's a little bit of that going on, and also because this is a book about kind of journeying through loss, that the experience of loss is very lonely and very isolating, even though it is something that is so universal. And obviously everybody who has loved ones at some point in their life will probably go through the experience of grief. When you're in it, it's just like, it just feels like no one else in the world understands, and your world is, so separate, and you're kind of in this space alone. And so I thought, okay, well, the opposite of that is obviously four people crammed in a car together. And they're, they cannot be alone. They're, forced to constantly be in companionship with other people, and kind of raising the question of like, is healing something that we kind of have to go through on our own, and it is a very individual journey, or is healing something that is done through connection and through kind of connection to others, and being surrounded by others, talking about things, hearing about other people's experience, is that what helps us heal? And so I wanted to to explore kind of human connection as a possible antidote to the loneliness of their experiences.
There's a quote towards the end: there's no getting over, just going on. So I think with the strength and maybe the courage that they found together as a group, that I don't think they would have achieved individually, they're able to do that. And I loved Donna, the bar owner.
Donna was a really fun character. She like is not in the book for so long, because she's just kind of there at the end. But I was like, man, I should just write like a standalone novel about Donna.
Yeah, no, I mean, I could just picture her. I mean, to me, it came alive almost as if I was watching it on a film, the way it all.
That was definitely the hope with me, like doing the trip and, trying to make sure that the settings felt really vivid, really alive. And I mean, it's so hard, obviously, to keep, anybody who has gone to a beautiful place and tried to then like describe it to somebody, it's so hard, right? It's so hard to kind of capture that in words, especially like a lot of the landscapes out west where this book takes place, the mountains and the desert, like these just, awe-inspiring settings. It's hard to get them down on paper. And so, but the goal was to make it feel as vivid as possible.
So you were in Sedona. Did you feel the vortexes when you were there?
I definitely had like I had a very, inspiring experience there, and definitely felt kind of like invigorated when I was there. And so, because I was there knowing I was going to write about it, was probably different than somebody just kind of arriving and seeing what happens to them. But it's, it was a really interesting experience of like me going through something and then weeks or months later reliving that experience through the lens of a character. And so with like going up in the hot air balloon, that was, I'm kind of afraid of heights. And so that was like a big deal for me. And then like a couple months later, I rewrote that experience through the lens of the character Sky, who's, 18 and has a different kind of perspective on life than I do. And kind of just like, it was interesting to sort of re-inhabit something in someone else's eyes. And then like the hike that I did in Sedona, then I rewrote kind of as Sasha doing that hike as she's going through kind of mourning the loss of her fiance and deciding if she wants to go to sleep or not. And so like how that experience layers on top of, the actual physical experience of doing the hike. And so I think that, that was a very kind of fun exercise in writing and reliving something that I lived through from the perspective of somebody else.
Just curious with the hot air balloon ride. Did you have the similar landing though, where it sort of tipped
we
onto
did.
its
We had the
side?
bad landing. It was like
Oh boy.
the guy was like, the landings will be fun, funner, or funnest, and you guys are in for funnest. And I was like, oh. So we had a rough landing, but I was like, this is great because it's better, it's better material for the book.
Right. It's authentic, right?
Yeah.
So I don't know if anyone has questions for Nikki. I know a few of you have read the book. If you want to unmute, or if you want to type in the chat, or if you want to share your video, you're welcome to do so. Some of us have met Nikki.
We could also talk about other things, not the book, if people haven't read it.
Talk about this. I mean,
or the other, but I could talk about the measure too if people, have read that one.
Especially with this one, I was thinking of both Ray his brother Johnny, and even Sasha sort of like being on the front line with helping people, protecting people.
Yeah.
And that cumulative grief and how maybe that sometimes can be transferred to one another. And I feel like you touched on that without, I got the term from your book, through the book, the cumulative grief. But even though it deals with such a somber subject, like you said, maybe taboo, by the end, I don't know, I sort of felt more, not that I had, I don't know, I felt like the whole process of reading it was sort of part of my healing in a way, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, I definitely, yes, the book goes to some somber places, sure. And it was inspired by, my own experience of grief. So it's going to be in there and, probably a raw way. But I wanted the book to ultimately feel hopeful. Both of my books, they deal with serious topics, but I want them to feel uplifting and hopeful and like something you want to talk about, and not feel like something that brings you down. And so that was definitely, the goal for me. And the characters are, they're going on a healing journey, right? So they're not going to, we know that they're not going to stay stuck in kind of the darkness for the whole time. And so we're just kind of accompanying them on that journey. And for me, at the end of the book, like this isn't a spoiler, obviously, but like, we don't necessarily know that these characters are 100% okay, but I think you get the sense that they're going to be okay. And they now have kind of the tools to get themselves to there, even if they're not there yet. They haven't, completed their work, but they're going to be okay.
Rosalind, did you have a question? I see you unmuted, and I'll spotlight you so we can see you.
Yes, I picked up your book in the library, in the Harrison Library.
Nice.
And it intrigued me because I was in that position. I had just lost my husband, which happened the end of June. So it was during the summer.
Wow.
And all I wanted to do was sleep, to tell you the truth.
Wow.
So I'm thinking, wow, is this something real?
Yeah.
And I started reading it, and it intrigued me. I'm better now. Now it's 3 months. I don't want to sleep all the time.
Yeah.
Just half the time.
Yeah.
But I thought you did a great job having these characters meet, and the young girl, I forgot her name, who was just traveling. She really wasn't on her way there, but she
hitchhikes for a brief period of time. Yeah.
Yeah, that was pretty good. So I like the relationship between the among the four people, and I thought if I was going to put this in a category, I would say it's psychological.
Yeah, I would say as you said, both of my books probably very psychological, very emotionally grounded. First of all, I'm so sorry for your loss this summer. And I appreciate you reading this book during that difficult time. And as you said, I've obviously at this point met a lot of readers, and a lot of people have come to me and said, I heard about this book when I was going through something in that immediate moment, and they're like, I wish that this place was real. Like I knew exactly what it felt like to want to sleep and to want to go there. And it's been a real honor for me to kind of get to talk to so many people who found this book during different stages in their grief journey, and hearing from them. And yeah, the most sort of the greatest thing that I can hope to hear is from people saying that, it felt like an authentic portrayal of what they were going through, and that they felt kind of, like their experience was seen and heard. And so thank you for sharing your experience here with us.
You did a great job. It was a good read.
Thank you.
Thank you. There is a comment in the chat. from Karen. I listened to the audiobook quite a while ago, so the details are fuzzy. I had completely missed the Wizard of Oz references. Same here. Do any of the characters have specific parallels to the characters in Wizards of Oz? Or are the parallels more to certain scenes, events? Were any of the characters easier, more difficult, or more fun for you to write?
Okay, a couple of questions in there. First of all, the audiobook is fantastic. I started writing this book and I wanted to show how there were so many different reasons why somebody might want to go sleep at the poppy fields, because it is this kind of weird, it's like a weird thing to go sleep there, right? And so I wanted to show the many different types of people who might want to go there. And so I decided to kind of put in applications from patients applying to sleep there, and kind of show all these different types of experiences. And I also wanted to kind of build out the world of what is this world with these poppy fields. And so I put in kind of newspaper articles and podcast interviews and things kind of to explain it. And then only when I finished writing did I realize, like, oh man, like, is this going to be really, really difficult to record as an audiobook? Because I just did all this stuff that I assumed would be very visual, like a visual cue of we're reading a newspaper article now, we're reading these, and I was like, what's going to happen to the audiobook? And my wonderful team at HarperCollins was like, we're on it and we want to do a full cast. We're going to do like 10 different narrators to narrate all these different sections and everything, and really bring it to life, kind of like a play almost. And so I'm so lucky and so grateful that they did that and created this amazing audiobook with all these different voices. But the main
yes, hi, is Doreen there?
The main narrator being Marin Ireland, though, who's obviously a superstar in the audio world. And the character, there are no specific parallels like, oh, this character is Dorothy, this character is the Tin Man. Like there's not that. I didn't want to be locked in that way. I wanted, like the characters kind of came to me as their own individual people, and not as kind of filling boxes like that. But I think just the general sense of like, they think that they need to go, like all the characters in the Wizard of Oz, they think that they need to go to the wizard to solve whatever their problem is, right? That whatever they need, they think is waiting for them there. But obviously over the course of the journey, they realize that they have what they need inside of them and they don't need this external figure to give them it. It's been in them all along. And so I think that's where I kind of pulled, that's what I wanted to have happen here, that these people think that they need the answers from the poppy fields. They need they need the sleep treatment. They need whatever it is kind of happening there. And then a lot of them realize that they don't actually need to get there. It was the journey and not the destination, right? And they kind of realize that they have things inside themselves and in their connections with each other. That's where kind of the learning and the growing and the healing is taking place over the course of the journey. And so I feel like that's very similar to the Wizard of Oz too. And writing them the most fun to write is interesting. I found the character of Ellis, who is the scientist who has created the poppy fields, probably to be like the most complicated character I've written so far in my, only two books, but in my career, because she's just a very complex figure. She's very smart. She's very ambitious. She thinks very highly of herself. She has made a lot of sacrifices to be the person that she is. And then she has created this very complicated place where, there's a lot of backlash against this invention she has created. She is a perfectionist, but the poppy fields sleep treatment is currently imperfect. It has these potential side effects that impact certain sleepers. And she is really haunted by these flaws in what she has created. And she's very kind of mentally torn over, wanting to do good in the world, wanting to make an impact, but these kind of unintended consequences of what she has created. And so she, I think, some days were fun and some days were tough. And it was like, she's a really tough nut to crack. And she's just a very, very, very complicated person.
Any other questions? Because I just had a few. But you're welcome to type them in the chat or to unmute. That's perfectly fine. I loved, oh, thanks so much from Karen. I loved how you referenced the measure in this book.
I thought that would be
page.
fun.
I had the page here, but now I lost it. 228 or thereabouts, where Sky is afraid to miss out on life. She's thinking about the fates and how they measure out the length of your life. So was that purposeful, I guess, to connect the two, or?
Yeah, I've always really admired authors who have like much deeper interconnection in their stories, you know, like Taylor Jenkins Reid obviously has like characters in the same universe. They repeat in books. Emily St. John Mandel has characters who kind of reoccur in books. And I felt like I couldn't quite do that because the world of the measure is such a specific world. It's a world in which everybody gets these strings. And so once I've moved away from that world, like, I don't think I could have characters, you know, repeating, because then all these characters would also need to have a string. And so I just wanted some other kind of little nod to, you know, to the measure, something that obviously the people who are coming to the poppy fields having first read the measure would notice as like a little wink. And so I did include that. But yeah, it's funny then, because I've obviously heard readers who are like, I read the poppy fields and now I'm going to go back and read the measure. And so I was like, oh, so that little like line does nothing, you know, it does nothing for them. It's like,
well, it was very clever. I loved it. And like, I'm just curious what the reaction has been, because just as in the book, you had the stop the sleep people. And then I never had thought of some of the things that could really go wrong, like someone trying to commit their spouse to go to the sleep therapy and, you know, for nefarious reasons. But what is the reaction then from people? I mean, I'm like Rosalind. I just really gravitated to the story and loved it. But have people been like, stop the sleep?
Anti-sleeping?
Yeah. I mean, or just felt a little bit more passionate about the other extreme?
Yeah, I think, you know, obviously in the book, I wanted a little bit more tension, and so wanted to have people who were, you know, vehemently protesting the poppy field sleep, and I think, and then for me, the, you know, people who suffered the side effect of the sleep, which is that because this sleep is trying to erase the pain of grief, my thought was, well, you know, love and grief are two sides of the same coin, because you only feel grief when you have previously felt love. And so the potential side effect here is that when we erase grief, do we accidentally erase love? And the people who wake up wanting to just no longer feel in pain actually can no longer feel kind of the love that they once felt for that person. They sort of lost that affection. And so for me, exploring that side effect and exploring the backlash there was the most kind of interesting part of the story, and how, you know, personally, I would never judge somebody for choosing to sleep. And, you know, if I don't know their pain, I can't kind of judge the decision that they make in this book. But what would happen to kind of their family or friends, the people around them, if they return with this side effect? And so kind of exploring that. But mostly the reaction I've heard has been, you know, a lot of people saying, yeah, I wish that this place had been real. Or I think if I had known about this place 2 weeks after I was going through a loss, I would have wanted to sleep there. But now, 2 years later, I realize I would not have wanted that. And like, you know, how kind of your perspective on it might change. Kind of similar to with the measure, like a lot of people, when I first read the book, I was like, absolutely, I want to look at my string and open my box. And then, you know, actually by the end of the book, like, no, I don't want to do that anymore. And so kind of this journey that you go on, and yeah, no, I think, you know, the reaction has been, I think people with the strongest reaction are people who have a very intimate experience with grief recently. And, you know, for anybody, obviously I'm not a doctor, I'm not a therapist. I spoke with grief counselors while I was writing the book, and I did a lot of research into grief from both a kind of psychological and almost like neurobiological perspective. But it's not a self-help book, it's fiction. But hearing from anybody that this has kind of helped them along their healing journey is just, you know, such a gift for me as a writer. And for me to have written the book from a place of my own grief, and then, you know, which felt very lonely at the time, to now have this book out in the world which is like the opposite of loneliness, because I'm getting to talk to readers, and they're sharing their experience and I'm sharing mine. And it's like all of, reading is all about fostering connections. And reading is all about feeling less alone. And like reading a character on a page and thinking, oh, I felt that way before too. I've thought that too. I'm not alone. Like this character is me,
Right.
And so that, I think that experience has been really kind of full circle for me.
Yeah. So I'm curious because I loved how you ended everything, I because I would have been in tears at the end. But I like there's sort of an open-endedness to it. So would you come back to some of these characters like Ava and Ray or Sasha or Sky, who's so young and really the free spirit of the bunch? Are they going to continue to have a narrative in the future?
I don't know. I mean, I feel like both of my books so far have ended in a way that has it has some closure. It has enough closure, hopefully, to kind of feel like you went through a journey with these characters, and that journey has kind of gone full circle. But they both have a little bit of open-endedness in them too. Not necessarily because I'm like planning on sequels for either book at the moment. But yeah, I like the idea of just kind of leaving things a little bit open. And I mean, who knows, maybe 20 years from now, I'm like, oh, I really want to go back to the measure. I really want to go back to the poppy fields. And so I want, things a little bit kind of leaving a window for that, I think.
Then that's a testament to how real the characters are. And you want, what happens with Ava and with Ray. And
they feel very real to me. It's like hard to leave.
Yeah. I mean, I'm like,
behind.
Are they going to get together for Thanksgiving? Are they going to get together for that New Year? Like, I really, you did such a great job with developing them that I really felt like I knew them and I wanted to see them happy and healed, which I think in their own way, they've accomplished that by the end of the book. So thank you for not making it a tearjerker at the end, but
yeah, this is a little
not that I shy away from those type of books, but this
nor do I.
This was a soothing it was a deep read, a heavy read with a soothing read, if that makes any sense. But
it does because endings are tough. Beginnings and endings are tough. Even though I like often note with both books, I sort of knew the ending, like I knew where I was trying to go, but then when you're actually writing it, which I tried to save until the very end of the drafting process, I'm like, oh, the ending is tough,
No, I think you nailed it well. I think it was a good conclusion. Any other questions from anybody or any of our readers? I wanted to read a quote from the book because it's sort of a shout out to libraries and librarians because it's, I believe, Ava, who's a children's illustrator, right?
Yes.
Children's book illustrator, and who also volunteers in her library and reads to the kids. And this is her thoughts. She took pride in the fact that even the tiniest of towns around where she grew up, compact communities with little more than a grocery, a gas station, and a church, often had a public library too. It was one of the essentials, like food and fuel, the nourishment of body and mind and soul. No matter how small of a city she lived in, no matter how quiet a life she led, Ava never felt bored or trapped or ignorant. She could travel the globe or travel through history, feel love or hate or envy or hope any day she pleased, anytime she checked out a new book. I love that. So
because it was something I noticed, during my road trip. We would drive through very, very tiny towns. And there was really often a library. And I was like, this is amazing. And it's obviously my great hope for people everywhere, especially, children everywhere, that they have access to, to many, many books, and that they can discover that kind of love of reading that I discovered certainly when I was a child. And so I found it very hopeful to kind of see all these libraries and, as I said, in towns that didn't really have much else, but, and so I kind of wanted to capture that, with Ava, who's from a small town in Kansas, and her grandmother worked at the library. And yeah, it was just, there's certain parts of the book where like you really just kind of put yourself on the page, and that kind of testament to books is one of those moments.
Thank you. I think I will quote it regularly with proper citation, of course. There is another question that Karen has, and she apologizes if this is too personal a question, but was your sister, it's a multi-part, it looks like, grieving the same loss as you were while you were going on your road trip? Whether she was or not, how did it affect your process of grieving to be with someone that you are close to who either was or was not grieving at the same time?
Yeah. Yes. No. We both lost our grandmother right before I started writing the book. And so then ended up putting a grandmother character in the book, and Ava is grieving her grandmother, although several years have passed by the time that the book happens. And by the time I did the road trip, a little more time had passed. But I think it, helped me sort of watching the way that grief was different for different members of my family, helped me shape the different characters in the book who grief manifests differently for them. Obviously talking to grief counselors as well helped me kind of, I was like, what are, the different types of grievers that you have seen, the different ways that people process, the different ways they cope. I was able to kind of learn from that and show the variance in the characters. But I think, having the trip was very hopefully healing for both of us. It was, I think it's something that kind of probably will never forget, either of us. And the trip specifically, kind of to me, was a way of honoring my grandmother too, because she was a huge traveler. There's no way else get to more countries than she did in her life, and a huge travel planner. And I kind of inherited her, her love of travel and knack for kind of planning itineraries and taking charge of trips. And so it just felt very right that this was, what we were doing for this book. And I think, writing the book was very difficult because of writing during a time that I was very kind of emotionally charged. But I think it was also, healing because of that.
Thank you. I'm sorry for your loss. I think I met your grandmother when
she came to the Harrison. She got to see the measure come out, which is incredible. And that was dedicated to her and my grandfather. So that was very nice.
Beautiful. Thank you. Okay, I guess we have a shy crowd today. Any questions, as Nikki said, even if it's regarding her first book, The Measure? This is such a wonderful opportunity to be able to ask you directly, and thank you for doing this for us, because you're 3 hours ahead and you have a busy schedule, I'm sure. So, all right. Well, okay. Everyone has this question on their mind. Thank you, of course, for answering the question. And are you working on something new that you can tell us about?
This is like the dreaded question for me, because I should have something, but I'm at the kind of like a lot of head banging, a lot of dead ends, sort of. I've been trying to come up with something new, but it's hard because like both of my books were very kind of like serendipitous, spontaneous inspiration almost. Like with the poppy fields, like just my personal experience, what I was going through, and then kind of like having this light bulb moment of looking at this poster. It just it was not something that I could have planned. And so I'm in a phase now where I'm trying to like force inspiration and being like, today I'm going to come up with a book idea. And unfortunately, that is not the way that creativity and inspiration works. And so I'm taking the time to just kind of read a lot and, go out on walks and just kind of other things that sort of feed the creative juices. And my goal is to be writing a new book by 2026 for sure.
Well, I think that taking your time, it's worked well, and something will speak to you the way that poster spoke to you.
I hope so.
I'm sure. Well, I'm sure. And we'll be waiting patiently for the new book whenever it's ready. for us to read.
Thank you.
And the other question that people always want to know, oh, what have you been reading? This is also from Karen.
Yeah, some favorites from, I guess, this summer, which is sort of summer reading is ending now. I really loved Sandwich by Catherine Newman, and she has her new one now coming out this fall, I believe. Although it kind of always stresses me out when writers like release so quickly. I'm like, oh man, I should be better. I should be faster, more prolific. But I loved that. I loved the first book. And so I'm really excited to kind of revisit that family. I'm about halfway through The Correspondent right now, which someone gave to me. And I'm really, I think it's probably my first time reading a fully epistolary novel. Perhaps I read that back in like college, something much more historical. But I've been really enjoying that because it's different than what I normally read, obviously sort of formatted and very, very beautifully written.
Okay, well, it's almost the hour, and we thank you so much for joining us today and for giving us such a wonderful, heartfelt discussion. Elizabeth says, thank you so much for the talk and being so open about your grief. I think we can all relate to it in every way.
Thank you.
So,
I feel with both of my books, there's no way to come into a discussion or a book club or whatever it is, and not have it just be like, all right, we're getting into it, guys. Like we're opening up. Every time I've gone to a book club, they're like, this was one of our most like personal, intimate discussions yet. And it's just that, yeah, inherently the topics, I think call for kind of very, very heartfelt, honest conversations. But I am, very, very happy and very honored to be having them with people.
Well, thank you for writing these books that prompt us to discuss these issues, which are important.
Thank you.
So thank you very much. And the program has been recorded. Thank you, Nikki, for allowing us to record, and it will be posted on the Harrison YouTube channel. I'll let
Thank you.
Well, thank you all so much for coming, for reading. Hopefully be back in not too many years.
Well,
and
the door is always open, or the Zoom is always open.
Yeah, I'll look for your other books.
Thank you. I appreciate that.